Yes. What you're basically saying is basically three types of gravity centering elements.
Sure.
Now, I'm gonna just give a side note. One reason that the concept has been so difficult for so many people, myself included, to understand is the terminology. I get it.
Sure.
It's because the terminology arose from George because there was no words to really describe that he could find to describe it, and also, it was during the space age, so it's you got some cool terms.
Yeah,
here.
you gotta throw the Jetsons terms.
You
in
got
there.
a little bit, and that's awesome. That's awesome. I love it.
Totally,
It's
yeah.
space-like, jazz in the
Yeah.
space age. Okay, so
But the most important, if I can interrupt briefly, the most
Of
important I
course.
think is understanding that the gravity concept. The gravity
Oh,
as
yeah.
a term I think is central. Is the
we
idea
got we got three different types of levers on our gravity spaceship. All right, so we're gonna go to this. We're gonna.
that perfect.
I know you like that, don't you? All right, so let's look at three different things to center melody on, for instance, okay? Let's center the melody on the chord. Well, that would be the vertical tonal gravity centering element. So every single chord has its organization, has its vertical organization, and if you construct a melody, say you're going down the river of all the things you are, there's a beautiful chart called the River Trip in the original version, and actually the later version of the Lydian chromatic concept. Talks about how Coleman Hawkins represents this local stopping at each chord town. So he's playing, in his own way, of course, but he's relating to A flat major and then D flat major. I'm sorry. B flat minor, and then E flat 7, A flat, and so on.
And this is really the foundation of how we are oftentimes in jazz education, for better or worse. This is how we're taught to think of it as chord, here's a mode over this chord, here's a mode over this chord, moving through the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's what I was taught.
Sure.
Even at Michigan State, studying with Ron Newman, I learned all my stock voicings and ways to play through changes. I mean, it's invaluable, helping me
Totally.
get through standards, especially with all the playing I was doing back then and still am. But what I was going to say is that that's the vertical way of thinking, is understanding an organization of the chord. And a lot of times, and you mentioned jazz education, one thing that I think is a big thing is our like guide tones, chord tones, and like working around certain chord tones within a chord progression. This is kind of a vertical activity because you're looking at a chord, you're going, okay, I'm going to really like land on this chord, I'm going to land on this chord, but I'm going to do it in a crafty way. Awesome. Okay, so that's
Sure.
vertical. But guess what? Chords go places. The Lydian doesn't go anywhere, just like the church modes don't really go anywhere. If you listen to Gregorian chant, they just float, right? But chord progressions in Western music, dominant tonics type of stuff, they move, and they are written in major and minor keys, and those major and minor keys are really not Lydian major and minor; they're major scale minor and minor scale minor.
Sure.
So they represent tonic stations, and that harmony traditionally tonicizes those tonic stations. This behavior of relating, in this case melodically, to a tonic station is what George termed horizontal tonal gravity. It happens concurrently. You can't have horizontal without vertical. In other words, horizontal is more than a few things. It's a number of things and the relationship between them. You could think about vertical as being the existence of a single thing and horizontal as being relationships.
Sure.
And George would go as far to say that's not just in music, but in life. You can have goals, but everything is made up of individual vertical elements. So you get a philosophically corresponding about this as you want. Maybe that's good for another time.
Well, I don't know if you can get because he did have I want to get into this, but he did have a nature of really relating a lot of this stuff back to sort of greater philosophical ideas as well.
It's true. It's true. He would say if it makes sense in music, it's got to make sense in other fields, in other disciplines, in nature. And you look at it, think about the tonal gravity field, say, of the Lydian scale, and let's look at the solar system. Well, guess what? The Earth is not the center of the solar system. It's the sun, even though a lot of us would like to think that the Earth is the center, but the gravity is with the sun.
Right.
So, but our horizontal center of gravity is the Earth because we want to see the Earth survive, especially now that everything's shut down until who knows when.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Great. And then, so now let's say, well, what's the best way to put this? Let's ease them in. This might be as far out as we can take people getting used to this. But so then the finally you get supravertical.
Ooh, wow, Supra. Awesome. Sounds like a Greek god. It's true. It means overall, like the eonic state. But you mentioned it in terms of like a whole section or a form, So the organization of the whole music, much in the same way, you take a look at this, Bach chorale. Well, it's written in the key of E flat major. Is that right? No, it's written in the key of B flat major. Sorry. I broke it down into Lydian. So I broke it down into Lydian stuff, so that gave me all my vertical modes. So I can actually blow through these changes, improvising, coming up with my own stuff. It's not going to sound anything like Bach unless I use some of his recipes, which I would probably not do, but you never know. I'm free to do that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, man, there are a lot of resolutions happening here. Every other chord or every few chords, there's a lot of resolutions. And we hear those resolutions, We hear that motion.
Right.
And
that's what gives it
that's horizontal.
Yeah.
Okay, but check it out. And then he goes, all right, it starts in C minor, right? Mm-hmm. It starts in C minor. And, that means like the overall tonic station of the whole thing could be looked at as C minor, all right? Even though we resolve to different keys. Oops, I'm sorry. All right, and so forth. And then he finally ends with... with that nice Picardy major at the end. Yeah. We heard that C major is sounding like, wow, so bright. Why does it sound bright? Bobby?
Because we're moving 3/5 in a sharp direction.
Wow, you got it. That's exactly it. Yeah, and when you move from C major, well, look what happened to that E flat. E flat got whacked, vertically speaking, right? So the vertical exists within the exists within the horizontal, exists within the super vertical. But listen how beautiful it is if we don't just all of a sudden go, I'm going to go G. There's a G sus, and then I'm going to go. I'm not going C Lydian, but I'm going this, but I'm going. You hear that mode. You're still hearing this really strong sense of a tonic, but you're hearing this context. But I'm relating to it vertical. This is what George termed verticalized horizontal chord modes. Ah! But